Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. This is supposed to be my monthly roundup, but my son has been here on holiday, so it's taken me a little while to edit this footage, and also this desert ghost thing. What a week this has been. So it would have been remiss of me not to comment on that in this video, and that's taken a little bit of extra work, so my apologies that this video is a little bit late. My season continues. I'm having more ovulations and more eggs on the way, and my incubator is filling up. The interesting thing about this particular ovulation is that this girl is a home produced female, and she ovulated within 10 days of her mother ovulating. So amazing synchronicity. My son's been here on holiday, so just a little bit of footage of the time that I enjoyed with him. It passed very quickly, and you can see him here catching up with some of the snakes that he's familiar with.
Smile for the camera.
He's now gone back to the UK to finish up his masters. He's already done a degree. He's had a year in industry with Dyson, and now he's going back to finish his masters in machine learning. He's a geeky IT guy, and his help over the last couple of weeks setting up some of this new computer equipment has been invaluable. I am continuing to pair, but only selected pairings now. Things are definitely slowing down. The weather outside is now very hot. The snakes are slowing down. Everything is hunkering down. Nothing wants to come out and free roam. The terrarium girl is underground and hasn't moved except to come out and feed. And females are laying eggs, so this would be the time when naturally they are hunkered down. They're not active. An ideal time to lay eggs and incubate them. A distinct change in the rhythm of the room. A little bit of local interest news here. Many of you may remember the video that I did on the Melaka Reptile Sanctuary, and I'll put a link to that video below. And I did film Mello, the yellow anaconda, and said that she had paired up with their resident male on the first day that she arrived. She gave birth to 17 baby yellow anacondas earlier this month. Yes! What a fantastic success story that is. Melaka Reptile Sanctuary has been trying for 13 years to get baby yellow anacondas. Nice one, Mello. Another personally interesting event, somebody sent me this photograph here of a pairing that they are currently doing. It's a Firefly Enchiclown female to a spot-nose vanilla het for clown male that I produced here about 2 years ago. It's awesome to see snakes that I produced being used in other people's collections, and this is an awesome pairing. Best of luck with that one. More news, ARP is breeding and he has his first clutches. With snakes like these, including Sher, he is going to be producing some outstanding quality stuff, and I've included some shots of some of his first clutches, and he's already produced a dreamsicle, something that he's been trying for several years now, and finally he's got one, and it looks absolutely awesome. So sometime in the next couple of weeks I will be shooting footage at ARP and showing some of the new babies that he's got. The interesting announcement from ARP is that he is now exporting. He has refined his export process and made 2 successful exports from Malaysia, and he is now able to process all the paperwork required to make exports. So all the snakes that you see on my videos, if you are at all interested, you can get in touch with ARP and ask about the possibility of an international shipment. We can certainly do it if we can make the logistics work. If you can do the import paperwork at your side, we can do the export paperwork at our side. So international exports are on. That is great news. And we have a computer upgrade, and this computer has a webcam, and I'm about to try my first ever live stream. Look at that box of tricks in there. Woo! So cool. So yes, live streams are back on the cards. I'm going to do a trial run right now, and then we'll program a live stream as soon as I get this figured out. So there you go, live streams back on. Okay guys, after all that, now this. Let's talk about the DG stuff that has recently been made public. Okay guys, I've moved up to the computer upstairs and I'm actually playing this video and talking to it at the same time, so this will give you an idea of what the live streams will actually look like. I will sort the background out here. I just put a whiteboard up for the time being, but I'll tidy that up. So what's happening with Desert Ghost? Any of you that have watched any of my genetic videos, and in particular the last 3-part series where we talked about gamete production and diploid and haploid cells, will actually have been able to follow what's going on. In genetic terms, everybody will know that the phenotype is the visual expression or visual appearance of a snake. The genotype is the genetic code required to give that visual appearance. So I think everybody is familiar with that and comfortable with it, and most of my genetic presentations have been based on Mendelian traits, which means very simply that the phenotype is affected by only one gene at one locus on one chromosome. That is sufficient to affect the visual appearance of the snake. We now have discovered that Desert Ghost is a polygenic trait, and very simply that means that the phenotype for Desert Ghost is affected by 2 or more genes rather than just one. That sounds very complicated and very scary, but actually it's not, because the genetic principles that I've presented before in my genetic videos are exactly the same. Meiosis producing haploid cells that go to make the gametes. The process is exactly the same regardless of how many genes are involved and how many chromosomes are involved. So we can work this out. The references to the videos that I've been watching, and there are many of them, the best ones with the most information and the most accurate information are actually in the description section below. So here I've put together a slide showing what we've been told about the visual desert ghost genotype. So the phenotype for desert ghost requires the following genotypes in order for it to express as a desert ghost, and there are 4 of them. The first one is Het DGA and Het DGB, so 2 single copies, DGA and DGB. The second combination is Het DGA homozygous DGB. The third combination is homozygous DGA and Het for DGB. And the fourth combination, of course, is homozygous DGA and homozygous DGB. However, this is not the full story. It's obvious when you look at these combinations that Het DGA, Het DGB is only rarely a visual desert ghost. If that wasn't the case, number 4, homozygous DGA and homozygous DGB would produce Het DGA, Het DGB from just one parent, which means that theoretically you could produce a visual DG using just one parent paired to a normal, and we know that that is not true. All of the videos that have revealed the genetics behind the desert ghost have specified a 3rd gene which has yet to be identified, and we do not know its relationship to the other 2 genes. We just know that it is important in this combination, this polygenic trait. Het DGA, Het DGB without an additional gene is not going to be visual. Okay, for those of you, and I know there are many, that work with Punnett squares, here is the Punnett square notation, and the important thing to note here is that this is polygenic. 2 different genes on 2 different chromosomes, and therefore we're working with not 1 pair but 2 pairs of alleles. Here is the notation for your Punnett square for those 4 visual DGs, and we already know that number 1 is incomplete and will not be a visual by itself. So at the location for DGA you can have heterozygous for the genetic mutation, which is capital A, and on the other side of the locus you will have the non-modified gene, so it's capital A, small a. And at the location for DGB you can have Het for the genetic mutation of DGB, so it's capital B, small b. Number 2 would be heterozygous A and homozygous B. Number 3 would be homozygous A and heterozygous B. And number 4 would be homozygous A and homozygous B. People have been trying to make Punnett squares using just these 4 combinations, and in fact you will see that this is the full possible genetic combinations for those 2 genes on those 2 chromosomes. So in the top left corner you will see AABB is the base unmodified states. On each side of the locus for the genetic mutation DGA there are no modified genes. At the location for DGB there are no modified genes. So on the top row you can see that no modification at the DGA location can exist with Het B and can exist with homozygous B. So in the second row you can see that Het DGA can exist with no genetic mutations at DGB. Het DGA can exist with Het DGB, and Het DGA can exist with homozygous DGB. The third row is homozygous A, 2 copies of the genetic mutation at the location for DGA, which is written as AA. So AA can exist with no genetic mutations at the location for DGB. Homozygous A can exist with het B, and homozygous A can exist with homozygous B. You can also look at this table in columns. So the first column would be for no genetic mutations at the B location, so no DGB. So BB can exist with AA, BB can exist with het A, and BB can exist with homozygous A. In the second column, we have one genetic mutation at the locus for DGB, so this is written capital B, small b. That can exist with no genetic mutations at A, it can exist with het A, and it can exist with homozygous A. The third column is homozygous B, so we now have 2 copies of the genetic mutation for DGB at the location for DGB, and homozygous DGB can exist with AA, het A, or homozygous A, which means that your Punnett square is a little more complicated than just the 4 squares. If you look at the 4 examples that I have highlighted in the bottom right corner, these are the only 4 of those 9 combinations that can, but not always, lead to a visual DG. So just bear that in mind when you're making your Punnett squares. Not 1 pair, 2 pairs of alleles. You're going to need a bigger Punnett square. Now this is the spreadsheet from Kinova that they made public on Trap Talk, and this for me is an extremely valuable piece of data, and all credit to Kinova for making this public. Here you will see that non-hets are blue, hets are orange, and homozygous are green. Visual DGs in the third column are green, het DGs are orange, and non-visuals are blue. You will see that there are combinations of het A, het B which are visual, and het A and het B which are not. It is more common for het A and het B to not be a visual DG. You will see examples of homozygous A, het B, which are visual DGs. You'll also see het A and homozygous B, same thing. Some of them are, some of them are not. The interesting thing for me here on this spreadsheet is that every single homozygous A, homozygous B is a visual DG. That does not work in the reverse perspective. Every visual DG is not homozygous A and homozygous B. There are other combinations which work in combination with DGC. So until we find out the relationship of DGC and its location, everything else is just pure speculation. I will do a genetics video explaining this DG stuff, but it is currently incomplete and I can only speculate as well. But no genetic principles are being broken here. There are only 2 locations at any particular locus that can be occupied by a gene, and that means that haploid production follows exactly the same rules as any other genetic mutation. This means that we can use our Punnett square. This means that the outcomes are predictable, but as I said, we do not have the full picture yet. So let's hold off a little while and see where this goes. What does it mean in terms of what we are doing with our desert ghosts? I know everybody is now rushing out to get shed tests, and I fall into the group where shed tests are unavailable. What am I going to do about my pairings for DG? And this is particularly important for me because I'm going to be pairing double het to double het to try to make desert ghost clowns. So there will be an influence. However, what I would say is that we've been breeding DGs now for decades, and we never noticed. Without these shed tests, we would not know, and we would continue along pairing visual to visual and expecting 100% visuals, which in almost all cases is still true. I do hear of anecdotal evidence of people pairing visual to visual and not getting a visual DG, but without the actual genetic makeup of that pairing and that particular offspring, this is a visual interpretation and we simply don't know. So until we get shed tests that prove that we're getting visual to visual and non-visuals, I'm skeptical. I'm also very skeptical of being able to produce a visual from a single desert ghost. I have never heard of anyone that has produced a visual DG from just a single parent. Now, the information that we've been given today would suggest that that is possible. That's why it's incomplete and we need to wait, because I think when the full picture becomes clear, we will see that that is actually not possible. So, as far as I'm concerned, nothing changes. Visual to visual will give you, in almost all cases, I say that with some reservation, visual to visual will give you visuals. Visuals to het will give you the best chance of getting the biggest ratio of visuals from that pairing. Het to het is still going to be a long shot. And you will see some anomalies in those het to het pairings or visual to het pairings, which in the past have been put down to bad odds. That's how drastic this change is. It is still within the realms, completely within the realms of what we understood previously. What this new information does is to help us to explain when we do have an anomaly. If you want to test when you have an anomaly, you will find out that one of the parents is not what you thought it was, and you can avoid that pairing in future. If you test ahead of time, you can avoid that altogether because you'll know ahead of time. But I do not think that we are not going to get any surprises once we genetically test. I think there are still some unknowns here. The picture is still incomplete. We have not had genetic testing for more than a year or two, and this new information is going to be extremely helpful moving forward, but should not change the basic strategy of breeding. So I am reserving judgment. I am not going to change any of my pairings, and I await with interest the further information that will allow us to develop a complete picture. Until we get that complete picture, this is pure speculation. I hope you found that useful and interesting. As I say, I cannot cover all aspects of this in this video, and I will be doing a follow-up video specifically on this. It's probably also a good topic for a live stream, which I will do, perhaps with a different background. In the meantime, most of what you are seeing on social media, attempts to model this with Punnett squares, are actually just speculation. No one has the full answer yet. Even Justin wouldn't be able to tell you. Perhaps he might already know. But certainly amongst the rank and file, nobody will be able to give you a definitive answer. So let's wait for the dust to settle. Let's wait for the mist to clear. Let's wait for further information from this genetic testing. But rest assured, this is not the last polygenic trait that we are going to see. I think this is actually going to be far more common than we ever suspected, but we never knew based upon our breedings. You will be looking at your clutches in a different light now and seeing new things, and that can only be a good thing. I know this information has caused a lot of concern and a lot of angst. And it really shouldn't. I give huge credit to the people involved that have made this information public. They didn't need to do that. Now, everybody, of course, is going to be rushing to get shed tests, so there is a financial benefit to some of these genetic testing labs that are probably now backed up with work for the next 20 years. Where do I buy shares in those companies? But aside from that, great credit to the guys for publishing this information. It is information that costs money to obtain, and they have made it available to everybody free of charge. I also give huge credit to Justin and to Summer on the Trap Talk video for releasing their own data in spreadsheet format and giving us a look at that. That information is extremely valuable. It will help to put this whole thing into context, and it is a database that most of us will never have access to. So kudos to those guys for doing that. Let's wait for the complete picture before we start jumping up and down. Drop down in the comments below. I will try to answer everybody's questions on DG, but as I have said, the story is incomplete and a lot of it is pure speculation. No one can give you the right answers yet. We need to wait and find out what DGC is, where it resides on the genetic profile, and how it fits in with DGA and DGB. I will be doing a pipe cleaner video on this to clear up some of the misconceptions and basically falsehoods about this DG story, so stay tuned for that. There's no point me asking if you want one, because you're all going to say yes, of course, so that will be in the making. But bear with me, because as I say, the information is incomplete and it makes it very difficult to put together a cohesive story. I can talk about it in terms of genetic principles, but in terms of firm conclusions at this point in time, it's very difficult to give you a complete picture, and I do not want to say anything that will mislead you further. Okay guys, that's the roundup. I have a video in the making of some of my holdbacks. I want to show you the progress of some of the holdbacks that are sitting here in my holdback racks, because some of those snakes look absolutely awesome, as you would expect from holdbacks. They're the best of the best, so I want to show them off. I'll also be, as I said, going down to ARP and shooting some footage of the new hatchlings. So stay tuned for all that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.